efficient in deploying technologies at the scale needed. What then is needed to fill the rest of the glass? Filling the glass requires building momentum, trust and ambition. Firstly, and most critically, developed countries need to honour the commitments that they've made regarding the financing. Secondly, we need a new approach to the multilateralism, its forums and its factions. There's no case for abandoning the UNFCCC as terminally flawed. It will remain at least the main discussion forum internationally and the only forum that allows for a voice for the vulnerable, the small island states or the poorer countries of Africa, all excluded to date from the G20 and their ilk. It's also very unlikely that the basics, or indeed others, will easily allow their veto power in that consensus framework to be at least cheaply usurped. It's also clear that after the, but it is clear that after the bruising of Copenhagen, that the consensus-driven UNFCCC forum is not the only place to build ambition of the world's largest emitters. It can be a place for building crucial momentum and trust, and immediate focus should be on progressing action in areas that are close to conclusion and essential to building trust. And these can be in those measures I mentioned of deforestation, of technology, of long-time finance. The measuring, reporting and verification of national emissions reduction targets will likely be or if not the most hotly contested issue here and elsewhere. It's crucial in those negotiations that countries don't slump back into the trenches of the old negotiating factions. Behind the scenes, Copenhagen actually gave birth to some new forums and factions. It gave birth to a new forum, not a negotiating bloc, but a forum for progressive-minded countries across all continents, and which freed them from caucus requirements and enabled them to share ideas. This will be very important to continue to support at UNFCCC and other meetings. It's also likely, and there were signs of this in Copenhagen, that new forums or alignments will emerge between the EU and the umbrella developed group countries in response to the emergence of the basic group. To the extent that this is focused on building ambition, this is a healthy thing. In reality, building ambition will come back to the world leaders making the necessary decisions. In the immediate aftermath of Copenhagen, this is more likely to be in the smaller leader-led forums as opposed to the minister-led ones like the UNFCCC, but leader-led forums like the G20 or the Major Economies Forum. But if they are serious, they're actually going to need to provide a voice, or at least a representative voice of the vulnerable countries at these meetings. The G20, for example, made something of a start on climate change issues this last year. They, for example, agreed to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. Progress on phasing out these subsidies will be critical to building confidence in the G20 as a forum and helping underpin the clean energy economic recovery. Other forums, such as the Major Economies Forum, first started by George Bush and John Howard, then adopted and adapted by Rudd and Obama, could be a venue for progressing technology cooperation and perhaps sectoral agreements in areas like aluminium or steel. Other forums will also need to be avenues for progress. The World Trade Organisation's relevance will only grow as talk of border tax adjustments and other initiatives such as India's proposed levy on coal imports to pay for clean energy investments grow. Not sure if you realise that, but a few weeks ago this was announced by India. Here's a tax on coal for clean energy, and I didn't hear a single miner make a squeak about that. It was quite remarkable. However, so there are issues there that are emerging in the trade area, and the successes that the WTO has had over the years can be built upon. Other forums like the International Energy Agency can be important for growing the trust and mechanisms for monitoring and reporting. Finally, filling the glass requires, now more than ever, stronger domestic policies that help build momentum, trust and ambition. Ultimately, what matters is that countries don't just commit to domestic action, they must also deliver. Significant progress internationally is tied to significant progress domestically. The opposite is also true, and to break this dichotomy we need credible policies. It means credible, internationally transparent policies that limit and price climate pollution. Now, the Coalition this year has reaffirmed its support for the government's target range of reducing 2000 pollution levels by 5 to 25% by 2020, and the conditions of comparative global effort that go with that range. But their direct action plans lacks credibility internationally because it offers no certainty that even the 5% target can be achieved. It also relies heavily on uncertain and as yet non-internationally compliant soil carbon offsets and provides nothing to build confidence in emerging global carbon markets. The government's CPRS does have the potential to get there, but the government this year introduced new conditions to moving beyond 5%. This shifting of the goalposts is most unhelpful in building trust, momentum or ambition, and raises questions about their support for the Copenhagen outcomes. The move also flies in the face of all other independent analysis done to date on the government's global conditions, which say that the global action committed to date matches up to at least the 15% target by 2020. Credible domestic policies also require incentives for investment in clean technologies. The government has been far from stellar, but movements in renewable energy and energy efficiency provide opportunities in that regard. And of course, the May budget will be crucial about whether it will deliver the some 600 million or so we need to be our fair share of that fast start money. Now that could be delivered even with a surplus if the government honours even just a part of its G20 commitment of phasing out fossil fuel subsidies like fuel and diesel tax credits or fringe benefits for company car use. How actively and ambitiously these policies and more link with our foreign policy will also be a crucial test. Australia needs to be engaging and supporting action across the new factions and new forums mentioned earlier. Australia could also, for example, sponsor early technical reviews of how close global commitments into the Accord come to avoiding warming of the 2 degrees target. Performance on all of these will help provide an answer to the second of my questions asked at the outset, whether Australia can be creative and committed enough to be constructive. The other question I asked is whether an all-embracing legally binding treaty is possible or required to the stronger ambition and action needed. The stark reality is that it's too early to tell. It would appear that forcing 196 world leaders back into a closed hall would be anything but toxic to driving further ambition. But perhaps by building on the cooperative pledges made in the Accord and those nearly achieved at Copenhagen, can combine with the accelerating race for competitiveness in clean technology and climate solutions to mean that a full treaty may in fact not be necessary. But the goal of a binding treaty shouldn't be abandoned at this stage, however, in our view, and our Prime Minister should be building ambition and investments towards this at leaders' meetings this year and next. Above all else, a treaty can lock in commitments which transcend election cycles and can also give countries the certainty they need to establish strong domestic policy. In concluding, it's clear that combining our cooperative instincts and our competitive reflexes has never been more crucial or more challenging. I am, though, by profession, spirit and now necessity, an optimist. The alternatives help none. Copenhagen shattered the holy grail